I'm going to be ranking classes in the game according to how impressive I personally believe that class is playing in solo. How impressive are these classes to me when I see clips or streamers or people playing these classes in solos? Is it harder for those classes to win? That's S tier. Or is it easier for that class to win? Then it's D tier, right? We go right down to the bottom. I am a shield fighter main, okay? I have a strong melee bias. When I'm placing these classes in the chart, it's according to my bias. Today is just my opinion. It's not facts, so keep that in mind. Okay, we'll start with something in the middle, and then maybe we'll get you guys to pick where I go next, because that's kind of fun. How about this? How about for Longsword Fighter? I've got some idea of a perk, a skill that is kind of characteristic of an archetype for the class. I might get these wrong, so apologies if I do in advance. I don't play every class, okay? Longsword. Is it harder to win? Is it easier to win? I picked Longsword first because I'm putting it right here, B tier. And let's talk about why. On the pro side, what are things that Longsword has to overcome? In my opinion, the Longsword as a weapon is situational based melee. It's bad versus daggers. It's bad versus range damage. Highly situational, which means that there are advantages and big disadvantages to using the Longsword. So I respect that. It's not particularly easy, and there are some classes, there are some weapons, some other playstyles that are hard counters for Longsword. So I respect that as an obstacle to overcome. There's also, I'm not exactly sure where this is because I know there's been a lot of changes recently, but from what I can remember, the hit slow on Longsword is also basically non-existent, right? It's a horrible weapon to use for chasing. You need to have somebody want to engage you in melee for the Longsword to work. In fact, you need someone to kind of attack into you for the power of the Longsword to be unleashed, right? So because there's no hit slow, because you can't chase, this is another massive headwind, in my opinion. It makes playing the Longsword harder, and therefore makes me respect it more. The last thing I'll say that makes me respect the Longsword is that because it's melee, melee fighters, melee enjoyers, people who play melee have to engage with the full combat system and need full combat system awareness. Okay, it's not just about shooting from a distance where if you miss your shots, you can kind of just shoot again. If you're in melee range and you swing and you miss, you often pay for it. You also need to be able to read and anticipate the melee attacks of your opponents. Melee players play the full combat system, spacing, aiming, blocking. As a result of Longsword needing to block, desync is a huge issue, and desync in Dark and Darker is horrendous. It's another horrible aspect of the game that Longsword users have to overcome. So again, that's on the plus side. I respect that. That's why we're here in the kind of B zone. On the negative side, what are the unfair advantages? What are the crutches? Obviously, riposte is a crutch. Longsword players don't want to hear this because it's a sensitive topic for Longsword enjoyers. I understand it, but from my perspective, my personal bias, the riposte is a crutch. It's a one-shot mechanic. It's a very fast TTK mechanic, and in my opinion, one-shot things require less skill. Riposte is a crutch, which is why you see people fishing. It's one of the fastest ways to victory, right? You can left-click Longsword and win, and that it's actually like a very viable high-level way to play Longsword is barely ever riposting or going for the parry. But because these exist, I feel like the Longsword has an easier time than a lot of other classes to get the victory. If they are in melee and if their opponent attacks and if they get the parry, a lot of ifs, but if that happens, a one-shot mechanic, in my opinion, requires less skill and is therefore less impressive. I'm not impressed by one-shot builds, and so therefore I am not that impressed by Longsword users that rely on the riposte and that rely on these one-shots to win fights. That's just my opinion. PDR stacking in Second Wind, the fighter survivability is also an advantage that fighter enjoys. So for these reasons, we're putting Longsword Fighter in particular right here in the middle at B, okay? Neutral B.